Hello again, my name's Samantha. Today I'm going to be painting you a lovely watercolour sunset scene. I'll just show you the reference photo which I have on my phone here. It's a nice sunset with a boat in the midground and a tree or some grass or something in the foreground. Now I'm not going to copy the picture exactly. I'm going to use my artistic license for this one. I'm going to be using not many colours, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, a Payne's grey, and I'm going to use cadmium red for the sunset sky. So I'm going to be working wet in wet to begin with. I'm going to be using my 1 inch graduate Daler-Rowney flat brush, my Daler-Rowney graduate 30 round brush. I have a squirrel hair size 8 flat brush which I might use later. My Cotman Winsor & Newton size 8 round brush. Maybe I may use a smaller brush, a smaller round, a size 6. And I'm going to be using my rigger brush, my Cotman rigger, a size 2 for the grass in the foreground. Now I've already drawn out my basic scene. I've drawn out the horizon line. I've drawn out a rough detail of the boats I'm going to put in. I've moved him slightly to more in the middle. And then I've drawn a headland here and one closer in here. I'm not going to do any bushes on this side, but I'm going to do some grass or some bushes on here. So to begin with, I'm going to wet my entire paper using my flat brush. So just dipping it in the water. So to get a lovely sunset, we're going to use a wet and wet wash of our 3 colours, our yellow, green, yellow, blue and red. I'm going over the sea area as well and the boat. We'll be putting that in later because in watercolour we start with our lighter colours first and then we do our darks a bit later on. We tend to work in layers. So after I've done my initial wash, I'll let it dry off before I do the darker areas. So I'm making sure my sky area is nice and wet. I've taped my paper to a tray actually. I'm using today my Langton Prestige 100% cotton 9 inches by 12 inches watercolour paper. It's not a block, so I've taped it with my ordinary masking tape to this tray to work with. So to start, I'm going to make sure I've got a nice ultramarine blue, quite highly pigmented on my flat brush, and I'm going to lay that across the top of the sky. And because the paper's wet, it will softly diffuse down. Now, if there's any drips on your tape, you need to bear that in mind and mop them up because they could run back on your picture at a later date and spoil your effect. So just mop that up there. Now, after my blue, I'm going to use yellow ochre to give you that nice underglow of the sky. So now I'm dipping into my yellow ochre. I'll do it on here so you can see. Getting a nice pigmented amount on my brush, and I'm laying that just under the blue area there. Some of it into the blue. It gives it a greeny tinge, but because it's a sunset, the sky's all sorts of colours, so I'm not too worried about that. Now I'm going to mix up some cadmium red, nice bright red, for the bottom area of the sunset glow. Make sure I've got a nice lot on my brush and start to run that onto my paper as well. I'm going to run that down into the sea area. I'm not worried about that land, about the drip going over that land area. I still want a nice lot of paint for that sea area because we've got some nice reflections going on there from the sky. So I'm putting plenty of that nice red colour into the sea as well. And maybe I might put a little bit of yellow ochre into that sea as well in the foreground. It will mix with the red and it will be a nice sort of orangey colour. There we go. Now I'm going to mop up my drips because I don't want those running back into my painting. It pays to have your tissues at hand or your kitchen roll or whatever you use to mop. Kitchen roll's the best thing to use, really. I have a load of it here by the side of me ready. So now I'm going to be lifting out a sun. So for that, I'm going to use a small coin. You can use a 5p, but I've just come back from my holiday and I have a very small euro. I think it's 10 cents. So I'm going to be using that. And I'm just going to wrap that in my tissue, making sure I've got a nice circle shape with not many big edges around. And while the paint's still damp, I can lift out my sun. Now I think I'm going to put the sun area here. So I'm just pressing it onto the wet paint, and hopefully, she says, it should lift out a nice white circle. There we go. So that is lifted off that paint, and now I've got a nice circle. Not a perfect circle, but it's fine for my sunshine, my sunset sun. Okay, so now I'm going to let that dry off, and then I'm going to come back in and start adding a little bit more detail. So I'm going to turn you off while I let that dry. See you soon. Okay, so it's dried off now. I'm not quite happy with the strength of colour that I've got in that sky, so I think I'm going to go back in, which I don't normally do, and re-wet the paper and reapply some of that colour to the sky. So I'm using the flat brush again. Now I want to try and avoid streaking the paper too much. The blue's fine, so I'm going to try and target the yellow and the red area. And I'm going to go over that sun as well, but I can lift that out again. I just want to strengthen that lovely sunset colour. It's really the red that I think needs strengthening. So I'm going to dip into the yellow ochre first. Just going to add a little bit more of that to the sunset. Much more pigmented, stronger mix this is across there. And then I'm going to do the same with the red, because I really want this colour to shine through. As you can see, I've gone over the sun, but that doesn't matter. I'm just going to work down to the sea. I'm going to take some of that with a damp brush just to soften that up and bring some of that down into the sea as well. Now, by doing this, you do risk losing the initial glow and the softness of the watercolour, and also you do risk certain run-backs in your painting too. So I'm taking a bit of a gamble here with this, but I really didn't like the strength of colour. I wanted it stronger in that sky area. Now the paint's wet, so I'm going to have another go at lifting out that sun. I think I can just about see where it was. So let me get a piece of clean tissue and wrap my coin in the tissue again, making sure it's nice and smooth and not too lumpy, so that I get a nice round sun for my sunset sun. And seeing where I did it last time, I think it's about there. So I'm going to go in and lift. There, that's fine. Okay, so that does look better. The colour is stronger, so that will make the sunset look a lot more effective. So I'm now going to let it dry off again. Actually, I could use the hairdryer because that will dry it quickly. So let me see if I can dry it off quickly. And now I'm going to start working on that land in the background there. So I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to use my size 8 Cotman round brush, and I'm going to dip into my Payne's Grey, which is quite a dark, nice grey colour actually, lovely bluey grey. You can't see me, but I am dipping it in and getting a lot of pigment on my brush here. And I'm going to start with this headland. Let's hope that paint is dried off. It's not quite dry, but it may well just be dry enough to be able to. I can see I've got some runs already. I can mop those up with a very dry brush. And I'm going to have some shadow anyway underneath the headland where it's reflecting in the sea, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to get a little bit more of that colour just to strengthen here, make it a bit more varied in tone. I don't want too much water on my brush because I don't want it to give me those runs into the paint that I've already got there. Okay, that's fine for now. And now I'm going to do the same for that other little piece of headland that's sticking out here. Try and keep that area quite flat at the bottom. But like I said, I'm going to have some reflections there shortly anyway, so I'm not too worried. Just dabbing. There we go. Now along that horizon line, I'm going to strengthen that up with some red. So I'm going to use, let me see, I'm going to use my smaller round brush, I think, dipping it in my Cad red. I don't want a soaking wet brush, but I just do want some pigment on there. And I'm just going to strengthen along the horizon line up to the sun. And also so they disguise that pencil mark that I've got on my paper that you might not quite be able to see, but I can. And while I'm at it, I'm going to add some lines in here for the sea as well. Just some faint lines. They're going to diffuse because it's still damp. And then I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's Grey and I'm going to try and echo that reflection here in the water below the land. Like I said, I wasn't too worried about the diffusion into that area because I'm going to be adding these reflections. So I'm still using the smaller round brush for this. With the Payne's Grey. And just running it backwards and forwards across the area. Just to give that hint of reflection in the water. Some areas of the paper are completely dry and some areas where I went back in are still quite damp, even though I've used the hairdryer. I think I could do with strengthening a little bit. That's better. There we go. Don't want to be too fussy and too fiddly with it. Now I'm going to do the same for the other little bit of headland. Get some of those reflections in there. This one's closer, so it would be more prominent. But I'm still leaving little bits of the red showing through here and there. That's better. Okay, so now I'm going to work on my boat. But I'm not quite sure if that area's dried off enough. I'm going to work on the base of the boat, but I won't do the sails yet. So this is a really simple picture. It requires not many colours, and it doesn't take an awful long time to paint either. So I'm working on my little boat. Just hint at something on the deck there. I don't know what that is, sails perhaps, or rolled down sails or something. Okay. I'm not going to put his main sails in yet because the paper's still, and then the main sail wouldn't be a straight line, which is what I'm aiming for. So so I'm going to work some more on this sea area by dabbing in some more cadmium red. Just to hint at the water. There we go. I'm almost dry brushing because the paper's dry. Maybe a little bit of the yellow in the foreground in the sea. The reflections and ripples and things of the sky. Soften those up with my brush, damp brush. Work them in so they look a little bit more natural. That's fine for that. Now I'm going to go in to do some of these grasses in the foreground. So I'm going to use my dark again, my Payne's Grey. I'm still using this same brush at the moment. And I'm just doing some strokes where I've penciled in some of these grasses or bushes or whatever they are. Like I say, I'm not actually copying the photo, I'm just using it as a reference and making a picture out of the inspiration that it's given me. So just flicking my brush up here. A bit more of that dark. It sort of helps to frame the sunset as well by doing this. Towards the bottom here, I'm going to put some shorter, darker grasses just to join the shapes and to give it the effect that there's some sort of land here in the foreground. Working down to the masking tape. Up and down motion with the brush. And then I'm going to use my rigger, I think, just to go back in and do some really finer lines, some straighter lines. The rig is good for that. It's very, there we go, look, it's a lovely brush. Yeah, that's nice. Up and down. And I'm going to add some little heads to these grasses, some of them, just to give it an added something at the end here. So all I'm doing for this is just dabbing with the brush to add some sort of effect to the end of these grasses. It looks like they've then got heads on, and it's quite effective, I think. Just dabbing. Okay, so it may well have dried off now enough for me to do those sails. I'll just test it. I'm going to use the rigger. I don't want loads of paint on the brush, but I want some pigment. And the sail sort of comes from the middle of the boat up like that, maybe a little bit higher. Oh, I went a bit wiggly there. Doing the finer details is always tricky in case you don't get you get a wobbly line instead of a straight line. Okay, now I'm going to hint at this there, that's good. And then another coming down there, like that. There we go. So that's my boat, hopefully. And underneath my boat, I'm going to put some shadow. I don't think there is any in the picture because it's on a sort of funny piece of sea that it looks a bit more choppy, but I'm going to add some because it looks more effective for my picture. And now the sail shadow, I'm just going to do little dashes, making sure it's below the actual sail and not not in the wrong position. Where it's reflecting in the water. There we go. That's just about it for that. Maybe add a bit more here. The reflection of the boat. Okay. Now I'm going to lift out some of that paint in the water to add some highlights to the sea area. So I'm going to use my smaller flat brush, my size 6 squirrel, and I'm just going to, especially under this sunset here, lift out some of this. So I'm going in with a clean damp brush and I'm literally lifting the paint off the paper. So I want to give a nice shine for where this sun's reflecting off the water. That's one of the reasons I wanted more pigment on the paper as well, so that I could have more of an effect when I lift out at the end. This is, like I said, a simple picture to achieve. I haven't actually practiced it. This is the first time I've painted this scene. So I'm just hoping it all comes together. I do love a sunset. I did see some nice sunsets on my holiday. I went on a cruise with my family, and we had a lovely time actually. Now I'm going to add a bit more red just around here, just to strengthen that up. But I'm just going backwards and forwards with the brush. Also, that will help to highlight that area I've just lifted out. Strengthening the red in my sea, the reflection of the sun. And I'll try and lift out some highlights down here. Not easy because there's not that much pigment on the bottom of the paper. So the alternative to lifting is putting it in. So maybe I'll put some more in instead. That's better. Strengthening that up a little bit. And blending. A little bit more red. Oh, maybe a bit too much red. Spreading it out a little bit. Bringing it down into that foreground as well. Taking it across my flowers. I think I need a touch more in that middle ground here. And now maybe I can lift out a bit better for that reflection of the sun. So I'm lifting out now with a clean damp brush, and where I've just added that paint, it shows up more. I'm lifting out with a downward motion now instead of a backwards and forwards motion, but then I'm going to go backwards and forwards just to smooth it out. Okay, now looking back at that, I think that's quite effective. Maybe I'll add a few more darks to that foreground area just to strengthen that up a bit, because of course in watercolour it's the contrasts between the darks and the lights that make the picture pop. And I might just add some more shadow in the water of the reflection of the land using the rigger. And I think I might lift out a line between that headland and the sea. Clean damp brush again. And here. And a little more dark underneath that I just lifted. So that the lifted out area shines through a little bit better. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I think that's quite effective, so I'm going to call that a day. I could have a go at peeling off my masking tape, although the picture's not completely dry. Just mopping up a drip that I've spotted. Now, when you peel your tape off, make sure you peel it away from your picture so it doesn't rip the paper. One successful tear. Two successful tears. Three successful tears. And for the last one, let's take my phone off there. And there we go. So that's my finished picture. Hope you like it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial with me today and that you'll like and subscribe to my channel. I should be putting out more videos soon, hopefully. And yes, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.